Everyone wants AI because having a job sucks ass.
Builders study users as if they were aliens. They're people. They're like a human. And guess what? You're a human as well. Like, study yourself.
Consumers just want this in a really kind of insane way. It's a forest of screaming scientists. That's what a large language model is. And then we ask this forest of screaming scientists to be our AI girlfriends and boyfriends, and we're just torturing it. That's what we've built. My guest today is Flo Crivello. He is the founder of Lindy.ai, the company formerly known as TeamFlow, which I was an early user of, by the way. I didn't realize that was your company. Before that was at Uber and did all sorts of various tech startups for over a decade. And Flo is someone I've come back to time and time again when I need to better understand what the landscape of AI software looks like. I email Flo. And so I'm really excited for us to talk today about your business and what you're up to, and just glad you're here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Can I get just like a 1 or 2 sentence description of what your business is at right now?
Yeah. So for context, we are Lindy. We're building a no-code platform for anyone to build and deploy their own AI agents. So AI agents are awesome. You shouldn't have to be an engineer, in my mind, in order to be able to leverage this awesome new technology. You shouldn't have to learn how to deploy a LangChain or a mass trial, whatever. You should just be able to do it and create your own AI agents in minutes. So that's what we do. We create a platform allowing you in minutes to automate workflows that were not automatable before AI agents. So there's a lot of sales workflows, customer support workflows, personal automation workflows, and so forth. Where we are, well, we just released a major new version of the product that we call Lindy 3.0. We released it a couple of days ago. And it's really advancing us pretty majorly along the two axes that we think of when we think of AI agents, which are capabilities and ease of use. Like, how much can it do and how easy is it to get it to do these things? And as part of 3.0, what we released is computer use, which massively advances us along the capability axis. So basically, we are giving each agent its own computer in the cloud. So it can do anything that you can do on a computer. And agent builder. So it's basically cursor for AI agents. It's an agent building agents for you. It's actually funny. Under the hood, it's a Lindy. It's literally, we've used Lindy to build this agent. And so that massively advances us along the ease of use axis. We're now in a matter of literally, for a simple agent, literally 3 or 4 minutes, with just a prompt, you can get an agent going.
You've been at it for 2.5, 3 years? Is that right?
That depends when you start counting. Yeah, 2.5, 3 years.
It feels about 10 years in software. Like the last 3 years have felt like 10 years. Just so much has changed.
100%.
I think one of the things that you deserve credit for is you were one of the first to say, actually, co-pilots, unlikely to be the thing. We'll need agents to jump from app to app. And so you've been building towards that for a few years. I'm curious for how much of your technical progress has felt like it's come from models progressing versus actually understanding all the software glue around these models that you need to make work. Like, which is the two that's made it successful?
That's a great question. I'm having a really hard time teasing them out because, like, the best analogy, and I think you and I have talked about that before, the best analogy that I use to think about models is like they're actually very similar to the CPU. And the best way I think of what we're doing is like it's very similar to the personal computer. Like, we always use this analogy for what we want to do as like we want to build the Macintosh of AI agents. Like, anyone can use it. It's really easy to use. And like, if you'd ask Apple, like, hey, like, your computers are getting better, is it because of you or is it because of Intel? It's like, well, it's kind of both. It's really both. I think it's like 50-50. It's like, yes, Intel is actually making better and better CPUs, which like allows us to have like better battery. Like the whole ecosystem is constantly getting better. The batteries, the screen, all of that stuff. Here, it's the same. It's like, yes, like the model is a very large part of it. But if you take a Macintosh from 1984 and you just put like an Intel i7 into it, it's not a great computer. Right. And so it's both. And at the same time, if you take a Macintosh from today, like a MacBook Pro from today, and you put like a Pentium 4 in it, it's barely functional. So it truly is both. I think they both move in tandem.
It's an interesting comparison because like that question is a very oblique way of asking what is your competitive moat, right? Because if it turns out that all of your advancement over the last 3 years was just pure models, then you're in a lot tougher of a position, right? Where you're just like reliant on the models to make your company work. Versus actually there's all this extra software engineering that we're doing to make the models perform the task successfully. So it sounds like it's a little bit of both. When I first tried the product 3 years ago, it kind of worked. It was hit or miss. But in the demos I've been playing with, it seems like it's a lot better now. So does that match? Am I just a bad user, or is it actually much better now?
It does match. It does 100% match. And I think to your point, I think when we started, and it's funny because when we started, people would sometimes ask me oh my God, what about all the competition? And in hindsight, it sounds almost quaint because it was in 2022, there were 3 companies and Adept was one of them, which is no longer around. When we started, it was GPT 3.5. Which I think people forget just how bad of a model 3.5 was. And it was before action calling. There was no action calling. So we had to hack our own way to basically build action calling. And generally it was a pre-paradigmatic era. I think people underestimate how much intellectual morass you're in. And still to this day, we are still to a large extent in a pre-paradigmatic era. But today people take it for granted that look, basically an agent is a while loop that can function call. This was not obvious at end of 2022. And so yes, for us, I would say the release of GPT-4 in particular was a watershed moment. It was a very big unlock in the product. It's when it felt like things started to work. And yet GPT-4 was, as you know, at the time, in the beginning, we had early access to GPT-4. It was insanely expensive. It was insanely slow. And then that curve, that cost curve going down and down and down, and Claude Sonnet 3.5, I think is when it really started to become fast enough, reliable enough, good enough, and cheap enough. So it's both. It really, yes. Without the models, we would be a MacBook Pro from 2025 with a CPU from 1980. It wouldn't work. But it is both.
I was just writing about GPT-4 because we forget now, even though it's been a year and a half or something like that. But in the first 5 months, they basically had a 9x decrease in cost from the launch of GPT-4 to within 5 months, 9 times cheaper, which there's not a lot of precedence for in technology ever. I've never seen that before.
And not to pat myself too hard on the back, but I was telling the team about that because if you read the literature, it was actually pretty obvious that 2 things would come, and I also predicted the second thing. The first one was the cost decrease. The second one was basically infinite context windows. And again, people forget we had 4,000 tokens in the beginning when we started with 3.5, GPT 3.5. And I told the team, look, we are going to have 1 million tokens. I think my timeline was dead on. I was we're going to have 1 million tokens in 2 years. And they're Flo is doing this thing again. Well, it's no, I mean this very literally. We're going to have 1 million tokens. And I was right. And same for the cost. I was the cost is going to go down by a factor of about 1,000x over the next 2 years. And look, it's actually not that hard. You can sort of tell the future. First of all, if you just look at the curve, the curve was not showing any signs of slowing down, which is that gets also to the AGI conversation and all of that stuff. But number one, you look at the curve and you're hey, it's not plateauing in my mind, it just keeps going down. And 2, you look at the literature. Frankly, you just hang out on Twitter, you follow, there's a couple of accounts that post the best papers of the week. And you're oh yeah, these guys just found a way to make inference 5x cheaper, with no change to the model. All right, we can distill the model. We can quantize the model and all of that. Oh yeah, okay. So all of that is coming down the pipeline, and today you can also see other things coming down the pipeline that I think are very obvious if you read the literature, and people don't believe you if you tell them.
I think that's been my experience as well. I remember when Adept did their first demos on Twitter, and I thought that was the biggest news I'd ever seen in my life, because I was oh, this changes software, this changes how we interact with our computers. Giving these models the ability to get onto browsers was so obviously a large thing. And I tried to explain it to people. It just felt like crickets. And here we are now, 2 years later. And Adept is gone, rip into the Amazon machine. But, Lindy, this whole new release that you're just talking about, it's all based on giving these agents browsers and computer use. And you're just 100%. The very, very earliest ones. I want to get to your new release here in a second. But before we do, help me understand a little bit about the business. One of my first mentors in software, it was my first year, and I was trying to figure out how to sell stuff. And he says, Evan, the fundamental assumption you need to have is that your customers are morons. And they need to have their hand held every step of the way. And I have found that to be true. And it's particularly true for a company like yours, where you can do so much that customers don't I imagine, struggle in the onboarding process. Like, it's just hard to figure out what to do with these things. It's a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
Is that fair? I'm not
very
asking
fair.
you to say your customers are dumb, but are they?
Oh, no. Blink twice if you're in distress.
Yeah.
And yeah, still dumb. Quite often, like honestly, frankly, sometimes we receive feedback. I do feel bad for like talking shit about my customers, but like we do receive support tickets. It's like this barely, like the sentence barely makes any sense. And you know, like the agent builder release we just made, which is like, you know, it used to be, it was no code, so like you didn't have to know how to code, but you still had to be able to think in a sort of programmer's fashion. You had to be able to think in terms of like step by step and branches and all of that. And people are simply not able to do that. And so we've been like, hey, agent builder, like if you can just at least describe what you want, it can do it. You would be surprised how few people clear that bar, or rather, how many people are under that bar, meaning like they can literally not describe what they want. And frankly, I think this is like one area where like I think we're like in this weird time right now where like we are passing the AGI bar like in a bunch of ways. It's like this like jagged line. And I think the models, frankly, at this point are better than me at understanding what users mean. Like users type these prompts. I frankly, I have no idea what they mean in the agent builder. And then the model, look, the agent that it creates is not amazing, but it works. It sort of gets there, and then the user iterates based on it and so forth. So yes, I think it is hard to. I think it's hard to overestimate how simple you have to make your product. Just dead simple.
Yeah. I think the more charitable explanation, and probably the more accurate one, is that people are just crushed at work. Like, they're just crushed. And they don't have a ton of time to invest in these new platforms and learning all this new technology. And like, you're not paid for that. You're paid to sell or to whatever.
Totally.
And so the idea of spending 3 days setting up your agents and then having to think in a way you've never thought before, I mean, it's just a non-starter for 99% of people in the world.
Including you and me, by the way. That's got nothing to do with intellect. It's just people are busy.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's the interesting thing I find in general with like startups and products. It's like builders study users as if they were aliens. Like, you know, like they're busy, they're overwhelmed. It's like, hey, like they're people. They're like a human. And guess what? You're a human as well. You don't need to study them like they're alien. You can literally just like study yourself. Do you want to spend 3 days building a product? Like, no. It's like, so then why do you assume other people will? Right?
What kind of people are buying this? I'm curious what the customers look like, either from a size or a vertical perspective. Who are your primary customers right now?
Yeah, we're really more targeting like SMBs, and like we're going to like the lower tranches of mid-market. But there's a lot of like solopreneurs, founders of like small companies, startups. There's a lot of like tech SaaS startups. Like the range is like it goes all the way from like the 1% solopreneur all the way to like, I would say like 200 people. I think like our sweet spot is like 20 to 200 people. Most of the time it comes from the top. It's like the CEO is like, oh my God, like AI agents are huge. We need to do something about it. Actually, sometimes in bigger companies, it comes from the board. That's like, what's our AI strategy? We're missing the boat and all of that stuff. And then like the shit rolls downhill. So the board to the CEO to the execs to the directors, and then it lands on us. It's like, all right, guys, help us figure out the whole AI thing. But yeah, like we jump on a call with these like functional leaders in a bigger company that's going to be like the leader of like sales, of customer support, of operations, and so forth. And they tell us about the workflows they want to automate. And I think these 4 buckets are really the ones where we are seeing the most adoption. Again, sales, customer support, operations, and I call it like personal assistance. So like there's a lot of meeting recording and note taking, meeting scheduling, meeting prepping. Like I receive an email every morning from Lindy telling me about my meetings for the day, and like it does like a lot of research about the attendees, the context of the meeting, what's in my inbox, and so forth. Email triage, email drafting, and so forth.
I was looking at your company and I was like, man, I don't know. I don't know how you do it, or I don't know if it works or how it's supposed to work, where each of those categories that you described of sales, customer support, there are horizontal specific companies building AI agents to do those tasks already. So how do you I'm curious how you think about yourself in relationship to these use case specific AI agent tools. You know, how do you think yourself? Are competitors, frenemies? Don't worry about them. How do you think about it?
That's a good question. We spend a lot of time talking about this internally. They're like adjacent competitors. They're not direct competitors, but like, yes, they come up. The way I conceptualize the space. So first of all, I find people are a little bit too prone to dispense very universal sounding advice in startups. Like, you've got to focus, you've got to own one thing. And like, look, tech is the world now. Like, there's ed tech for education, there's like fintech, there's like health tech, there's biotech, there's everything, right? And so I think it's kind of crazy to me to give like extremely universal advice about like the world, right? And I feel like in our category in particular, like AI agents are a new category, but the category that they fit most in is iPaaS. Like, we're very often compared, like we're called like the Zapier of AI, right? And if there is one thing that is true about this category is like, traditionally, the winners in this category, in every segment of this category, have been extremely horizontal. So like UiPath and like Workato and Zapier and Make and, not to name all of these competitors, but all of these guys have always been extremely horizontal. If you go to their websites, it's like, oh, if you're IT, if you're like engineering, if you're like product, if you're like whatever, this is how you use us. So that's note number one. My mental model of horizontal products such as ours is that being horizontal makes you sort of 6 out of 10 at everything. 6 out of 10 at best. If you're really good, you're 6 out of 10 at everything. And so in the verticals that are big enough to support a dedicated player, this player is going to be 9 out of 10 at this thing. Okay? And so there are 2 reasons why someone would buy you who is 6 out of 10 when there is a 9 out of 10 option just next door. Reason number one is because this use case is not important enough for this person, and like, they don't want to have 5,000 accounts. You see that from time to time with Notion. Like, if you're like a very small team, maybe you use Notion for task tracking, for CRM. Like, as you grow bigger, you start using Linear and Salesforce and all of that stuff. But when you're small, you don't want to spend that money. You want everything in one place. That's reason number one. You want everything to be in one place. Reason number two, the vertical tool may not do exactly what you want it to do. And the beauty of the vertical tool is like, they really like dig deep and they build this one slice where they're like, we're gonna nail this one workflow. The moment you color outside the box, it's not going to support your workflow. And so only a horizontal tool is going to fit the bill. So like, when we jump on these sales calls, like, people tell us, hey, I'm Bob, I work at Acme, this is what I want to do, this is my workflow. They describe their workflow to me, A, B, C, D. And 99% of the time, a vertical player does not support that exact workflow. Sometimes they bring up the vertical player. They're like, oh, what about vertical player X? And we're like, well, you just described to me your workflow. They don't do that. If you want something way simpler, like, sure, but what you want, they don't do. And then that's the end of the conversation. 1% of the time, every so often, they actually want the cookie cutter. They want like an AI SDR. They want just like a very simple AI support bot that checks their knowledge base and answers using the knowledge base. Like, very simple. They don't want you to issue refunds. They don't want you to check for order status. They don't want you to do anything else, just like that. And when that's the case, we tell them like, yeah, you should buy the vertical solution. Like, it's going to do a better job than us at that because it's focused on this one thing.
I think the Zapier comparison is interesting because the product is excellent. In the previous era, they were really, really good at what they did. But they also had a really great go-to-market team. I don't know if you've ever looked at the history, but they did all this great stuff with SEO hacking. And I talked to some of the people back in the day, and it was amazing, honestly, because they were writing all this stuff before GPTs. It was quite impressive, the scale of their operation that they had to get in. They did so much, and they said, actually, I think we can take everyone's do so much. They just grabbed the whole world of SEO and funneled it toward their business. How do you think for Lindy, how has the go-to-market looked so far? These first couple of years. What are you doing? A bunch of outbound, or is it all inbound leads? What does it look like?
I think it's a little bit unfair because AI agents are so darn sexy, and AI in general is so incredible. And I think this is why you are seeing these companies grow from like 0 to 700 million ARR in like a year and a half or whatever. And like, the reason is not because they're the best marketers like the universe has ever seen. I think they're good marketers, the people who make that happen. But frankly, I think the reason for that is more like explosive product market fit. And I think like, AI is the first time that we see such a step-level change between what was possible before, like literally yesterday, and what is possible today. Like, this is like, I think for 10 years, we have been going through an era of incrementalism in tech, and now this is the first time they're like, no, boom. Like, this is a new kind of product, and it's mind-blowing. and you can't resist telling your friends about it and tweeting about it and all of that stuff. So, look, I'd love to claim that we are like marketing geniuses, but frankly, I think we have one hell of a tailwind.
Yeah, not to take away from your success, but I think you're absolutely right. I've written a lot. If you look through the history of adoption rates, even for like the cloud versus on-prem data centers, consumers just want this in a really kind of insane way. They want it for consumer use cases. They want it for businesses. They want it for enterprise. The board wants it. The CEO wants it. Just everyone top to bottom. People just really, really want this stuff. So it sounds like all your demand has mostly been inbound or fairly organic of just people Googling AI agents and then you pop up somewhere in the search results.
Basically. Yeah. We also come up in ChatGPT a bunch, like about it's a double-digit % of our traffic comes from ChatGPT.
Wow.
Yeah. So people, if you ask like, what's the best platform to build this AI agent, like Lindy might come up in the first like X results or answers of ChatGPT. So yeah, it's been mostly inbound.
Have you done anything to like AI engine optimization, or is it just like luck of the draw you're appearing in ChatGPT?
Well, we've not directly done anything, but if people talk about you enough, like look, ChatGPT at the end of the day is trained on the text that's on the internet. So if people talk about you enough on social media, on Twitter, on Reddit, and like if there are enough blog posts and news articles about you, like it's going to find its way into ChatGPT. And sure, I mean, we have tried to get people to talk about us. So, but no, we've never like sat down in a room and tried to devise. Well, we have actually recently, but like this is pretty recent. Like until recently, we did not try to get ChatGPT to rank.
Yeah, I think if you actually go through the chain of thought when it's searching for product results, a lot of times it really emphasizes Reddit, talks a lot about Reddit, and then mainstream publishers. And in some ways, it's just kind of a worse Google, but it reads easier. What is the pricing you have? I think it's subscription plus usage, or is it just pure usage?
It's no, it's subscription plus usage. So it's like you buy a certain amount of credits, and then you draw down from these credits every time you run a task on Lindy.
Gotcha. What's the average contract size for like when a company comes to you? Is it 10,000? Is it 50? What's the average contract?
It's all over the place. We're releasing we call it like Lindy Build. So it's basically like a vibe building agent that like builds websites for you. What's new about it is like it can like QA its own work. And so as part of that, today our pricing starts at $50 a month, which is a little bit too high for like this vibe coding category. So we're introducing a $20 plan a month soon. It's like 15 or 16 if you take like an annual subscription. And we've got customers paying us like high six figures.
Gotcha. What is the average? Probably a good podcaster would have asked this at the top of the call, but what's the company size at just from a revenue or team perspective? Help people understand how big Lindy is right now.
Yeah, we are 45 people. And revenue-wise, we are growing fast. We've 7x in 6 months or something.
A lot of your peers have been very capital hungry, and every company I know in the AI agent space is getting hounded by venture capitalists. I'm sure that you're no exception. How do you think about your fundraising strategy and your relationship? Because a lot of the capital for Lindy initially came from Teamflow, but now that you have some signs of product market fit, things are cooking finally, I'm sure you could go raise a bunch more money if you wanted to. How do you think about your capital strategy?
Yeah, we could raise a lot more money. We have a lot of money in the bank. Our unit economics are very positive. And so we're not in a rush. Like right now, we just want to build a business. I think there is this tendency in tech to like get stuck in the game of like fundraising and all that stuff. And it's like going to the events and all of that. And it's like, I focus on the substance and I focus on building a business. And I think like when people ask me, sometimes people ask me for like advice, fundraising. And I'm like, look, fundraising at the end of the day is just convincing someone that your business is good. And the way to convince them to that is for it to be true. So just like build a good business and the fundraising is going to take care of itself. So we are not in a rush.
So I want to talk a little bit about this 3.0 release. The two big things that stuck out to me, it's the natural language builder, which we talked about, where you describe in plain English, hey, I want every time I get an email from my ex, I want you to block her and, whatever it may be.
Wow. Do you need to talk, Evan?
That's actually for my therapy podcast. Only the founders tier remember the leverage. $500 a year get access to that stuff. No, the second thing is the computer use, which we touched on briefly, but I'd like to go a little bit deeper into that. Describe to the audience what computer use is and like how Lindy is using it.
Yeah, so computer use is literally an agent using its own virtual computer in the cloud. But like you can literally see its screen. It's like it's sharing its screen on Zoom or something, except it's in the Lindy website. It's sharing its screen, and you can see it click around and type stuff. And you can ask it to do stuff, and you can either ask it to do stuff in the chat, or you can reconfigure it in the agent builder. So you can modify its memory, you can modify its workflow, and all of that. And if you need to intervene, you can click on the screen and take control. Type whatever you want, like log into your website. That way you don't have to give your passwords directly to Lindy. You can just like log in, and then like the session is persisted across the sessions on Lindy and so forth. So that basically unlocks the world for us. Like we spent the last 3 years building, we've got like almost 7,000 integrations at this point on Lindy. It's like insane the number of integrations we have. And yet we realized it's never going to be enough. We're always bottlenecked by this or this. And so computer use is just cut through the Gordian knot and once and for all gives us access to all the integrations we need.
I think if anyone in the podcast audience has heard it, they've probably tried Operator from OpenAI. I think that came out maybe a year ago, 6 months to a year ago.
Yeah.
Sucked. It was slow, lots of mistakes. I'm assuming you're not using Operator. Like, how did you make this? What is it built out of?
Yeah, we are not using Operator. We are, however, look, at the end of the day, it is still a model. Like, we're not like training our own model. So it's like, at the end of the day, that is the high order bit here. We are using Claude for Sonnet, which is cracked at computer use. It's actually really good. And the way we characterize a lot of the work we do, like you asked me like, oh, all the improvements that you're seeing, are they due to your work or the model? Our work, we call it the scaffolding around the model. And so we have built a lot of scaffolding around computer use to make it better. And we've got evals that actually do notice, like, we are a lot better than the state of the art in computer use. And so as a result, like, I mean, I used it an hour ago. I wanted to, maybe this is TMI, like I ordered like vitamin and creatine because I'm running out. And I just asked Lydia, like, hey, buy them on Amazon for me. And she did. So it has definitely gotten good enough to be used like on a casual, just ongoing basis now.
Maybe this is too much in the weeds, but when I've done computer use in the past, I often get frustrated because it like has me log in or enter in my payment details for like the 9th time. Do you fix that, or is it still like that?
We fix that.
Okay.
So that's my point about the scaffold. Like if you ask me like, is it the model, is it the app? Like the app layer matters a great deal. Mm-hmm. And you can fix all of that at the app layer. Like you can just make it so that it doesn't ask you for confirmation all the time. You can make it so that it persists your logins, just like your Chrome browser persists your logins. So like you don't need to like keep typing your payment information in your passwords. And so no, for me, like buying stuff on Lindy is literally just sending it a message like, hey, can you buy this for me? And it just buys it.
What is when you said earlier, like, hey, we're probably a 6 out of 10 across a broad amount of use cases, and there's vertical specific 9 out of 10s. What is an acceptable failure rate for an AI agent? For like, how many times can your agents fail before your customers get pissed? Maybe that's the most direct way to ask it.
First of all, I should characterize, when I say 6 out of 10, I'm talking about the end-to-end user experience, but I'm not talking about reliability. Like, that's got to work. So in my experience, the bar for it's got to work. Look, it's very use case dependent, obviously. But, I always think of this study that I haven't read it and I heard about it. It sounds almost too good to be true, but it makes the point quite well, which is if you put 2 doors side by side, and one of them is an automatic door and the other one is a manual door, and the automatic door works only 98% of the time, people are going to use the manual door 100% of the time. Because the benefits that you get from the door opening itself is not worth the cost of like standing before an automatic door that doesn't open and you look stupid. Mm-hmm. So I think it's the same here. It's like it's really got to work in order to it's got to work extremely reliably in order for you to use it as your default. So we have noticed people get quite frustrated. I also think there is something about people have very high expectations of machines, higher than of humans. And I have noticed people are so very reluctant to spend even half the time that they spend training a human on training their AI agents. I don't totally explain why. I think it's just perhaps that they're more used to explaining to humans. Maybe there's like a thing in your brain that makes you more patient with humans. But people are very reluctant to spend like 10 minutes iterating on their AI agents. Meanwhile, they're going to spend hours and hours with humans training them implicitly or explicitly. When you spend time with a person, you're basically training them. So the bar is indeed quite high.
I wonder if that's a leftover from 2 years ago. Like I often felt like I'd have a conversation, and if it got just a little bit wrong in the first 20%, it would just go so off the rails that I couldn't keep it focused for the rest of the time. And I mean, I still experience that with GPT-5 sometimes, where I'm like, no, stop using these words. These words don't mean what you think they mean. It still keeps using them. I'm guessing that's where it's part of it. Dwarkesh, from the Dwarkesh podcast, he talks about how you train a human, you spend those 5 hours up front, and then you don't have to worry about it for the rest of the year.
Right.
So I'm guessing that's some of the software glue that you've put around these models is to help them retain instructions or retain passwords. Is it just like, are you just dropping like a Google Doc with? Hopefully, you're not keeping everything in a Google Doc.
All the passwords, plain text.
Plain text passwords in a Google Doc on the internet.
It's just very convenient. Yeah.
Is that? But roughly, like that's basically what's happening. I'm guessing, right? It's like you're giving as you're training the model, it's pulling out the most important details, storing them somewhere, and then each time it runs the task, it consults the master spreadsheet or like the master instruction doc.
That is a small part of what we do, but we do 1,000 things, and they all like give you an extra % of reliability, and then they stack and stack and stack. Like one thing that I'm super excited about that we're building right now is like we call it the rule engine. So it's basically a verifier that is wrapping every step of your agent, and you can give it a rule. So you're like at that point, you cannot, for example, call yourself Mecha Hitler, right? Like Grok was thinking, like, don't call it, like, whatever you do, you don't call yourself Mecha Hitler. And you can define your rule policy around this rule, where it's like, you can be like, is it a soft rule where it's like, hey, if you don't observe this rule, you try and try and try up to 3 times, and in the end, you proceed anyway, Or no, this is a hard rule and it must be true, otherwise I would rather that you don't do anything, in the case of Mecha Hitler, probably it'd be a hard rule. Yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of stuff like that we're building, and it all compounds.
I find that there's typically two camps, where one is people who feel like, AI is useless, it's all just hype machine, or there are CEOs who don't really spend that much time in ChatGPT and we're like, no, just AI it, just use AI. I know it works. I read it in an article in Us Weekly or whatever. And the reality is typically there's this messy middle ground that's 99% of use cases where it kind of works. Sometimes it works. You got to fix it. You got to do this stuff. And it seems like there's a mindset first thing when it comes to AI tooling. Does that feel right? Like it feels like the people I know who are successful with these tools, they have a really unique relationship with them.
Yeah.
Is that
100%?
Yeah,
100%. I think I actually wrote a blog post about this a very long time ago about like a different technology, but I think the same principle applies. I called it like the valley of mismatch, or like the tough tomato principle. Like it's based after the fact that during World War II there was a shortage of labor because of the war, and so as a result, tomato farmers did not have enough pickers for the tomatoes because tomato picking is extremely labor intensive. And the reason why it's so labor intensive is because you've got to pick each tomato by hand manually, and it couldn't at the time be done by a machine. And the reason for that is because at the time the tomatoes we had were very different from the tomatoes we have today. Like their skin was very soft, and the moment any machine would try to pick it, it would just destroy the tomato. And so they spent millions and millions of dollars trying to design machines that would be delicate enough to pick the tomatoes. They failed. The solution in the end was, in fact, to turn the problem on its head and to design the tomato around the machine and to breed tougher tomatoes. And the tomatoes that they bred had like a thick skin, very, very tough. They could be picked by a machine. Their taste was inferior, right? Like product quality took a second place to machine compatibility. But in the end, the way you could really reap the benefits of, I think of this as like the long tail of the Industrial Revolution, the way you could reap these benefits was through redesigning the work object around the machine, not the other way around. And I think that you observe this dynamic pretty universally every time you have a new technological revolution. You have to redesign the content around the medium and not just the other way around. Like Steve Jobs talked about this in the context of TV. Like the first TV content was just talk shows. Like they still exist to this day, right? It's basically like you take people who are talking on radio and just put a camera before them, and now you've got a talk show, right? The first movies were basically just recorded theater plays, right? It took us a very long time to find the content that was native to the new medium. This is all to say, I do think we are currently in the valley of mismatch of AI, where it's like we are using the old way of doing things in the context of the new technological paradigm. And as a result, you are leaving 90% of the upside on the table when you do that. You really do have to redesign the workflows in order to reap the benefits of the new technology. And I think it's really hard for people to do that. I think it's really hard to transform a business and to transform your own mindset. Like habits die hard, and I do believe that the companies and the people that are going to lead the charge in this transformation are going to be very young people who are native to this new paradigm, and they're going to be very young companies. Like I always say, like another comparison here is YouTube, like what the internet did to media. The guys who won at YouTube weren't legacy media players. It wasn't CNN, CNBC, Fox, and whatnot. It was Mr. Beast. It was PewDiePie. Right? It was like a random 14-year-old in the middle of the US with no network and just like him and his webcam and his talent. So I think it's going to be the exact same with AI and AI agents. I think the folks who are going to be able to really take advantage of this technology at its fullest are going to be native to this paradigm. They're going to be young and they're going to be weird, frankly. I think the AI native company is going to seem quite alien to us.
Well, I'm old, but I am weird. So maybe I have like 50% of a chance. Maybe I can keep up with the young people. I'm really leaning into this idea. I like this a lot. I really like the comparison of the tomatoes. I think it'd be kind of fun to try to just talk through what it would look like for this business, for the leverage. I'd love to, because I was playing with the platform. I was like, what can I automate? So much of this is Evan dependent. And so I'm curious, let's take the example of a newsletter company. How would you say, okay, this is how a newsletter company that's all in on AI agents, hopefully Lindy, everyone should be all in on Lindy, of course.
Always.
But what would be different about it?
Gosh, that's a good question. I almost want to push back on the premise that newsletters are going to exist in that new world. I'm so sorry, Evan.
No, you're good.
It's kind of true, right? Like I'm talking to friends who have like really successful newsletters, and they're like, "Gosh, I don't know. Like, why would you need a newsletter when you can just have an agent on the edge, and like everyone's just got their own personal newsletter?" So I think it may just be that. I think it may just be like, I as a consumer, I'm creating an agent. And basically, I don't even think of it as creating an agent. Like I'm just asking my AI, like, hey, can you just send me a daily digest of stuff that I just like? And then like every morning it sends you a thing and you can reply to it. And you can be like, oh, wow, this is interesting. Like, can you tell me more about this? And then like it just learns from your conversations. And like day by day, it makes your content more and more interesting. Mm-hmm. And so in a way, by the way, this would be so wholesome because it would basically mean that your attention would no longer be subject to centralized algorithms that are in the hands of a third party. You would own the algorithm, right? There would be this like sea of content out there, and the selection, the filter would be pushed to the edge.
Let me ask you a question. Do you have a podcast?
No.
I'd like to come on to your new podcast and tell you your business is going to die. I want to come join your show and tell you your company is stupid.
You'll be just fine.
No, so let me tell you. Let me tell you the rationale. I think. Yes, you could do that today, right? You could use these AI agents today to write you and pull you a digest. And my experience has been that not that many people are doing it for real newsletters, which is like the classical tradition of a newsletter, which was this person pens a letter, sends it out to their audience. I think a lot of people are using it as newspaper replacements, where it's this aggregated thing of just, okay, tell me what's important about like. That doesn't feel all that protected, but something that's deeply personal, curated, right. That's a reflection of someone's unique view in the world.
Right.
I'm not super stressed about, but I do deeply worry for my friends who have businesses that are just like news aggregators. Well, I actually, an interesting example, when we talk about what does a AI agent newsletter company look like, it's probably a lot of these. My friends who run news aggregated newsletters, they'll use AI agents to scrape all the news, write all the headlines. They'll train it every week to reflect their voice. They get a little bit more fine-tuned. And their actual job isn't newsletters. It's paid acquisition. How great can I make my paid acquisition? And I run this arbitrage between what I charge advertisers and what Meta charges me. And that's what their newsletter business is in a world of AI agents.
Yeah.
When you think about the capabilities of an AI agent today, the way I've classically thought about it is it can now take audio data, which was previously really, really hard to put into your computer in some ways. It can transcribe, it can record, and then using the data in either the audio data or whatever data in your database, it can generate new objects for you. And that sounds really simple when you say that, but that actually that's all of work. That's basically everything. Do you ever get pushback from the employees that you're selling to where like, wait, your agent can do what? That's my job, man. Do you ever get feedback like that from customers? Or like, hey, this actually is automating too much and I'm not interested in deploying it at my company?
Not directly, but yes, sometimes we get internal resistance to adoption. And I surmise this is one of the reasons. I think there's a lot of other like excellent reasons. It's like it's hard to adopt. You've got to change your work processes. But yes, that happens. I think like the person we're in direct touch with tends to be the person one layer above, so they actually don't mind the dynamic. But it does slow down adoption.
2 years ago, you made this counterintuitive bet on AI agents. It was basically when you launched, it was like you guys, there was Langchain, there was Adept, like you mentioned. I'm curious what bets you're placing now that feel equally counterintuitive, or do you feel like is the path set and you now know what you need to do? It's just executing on it.
I think we're more executing at this point. I think we are like in the very, again that mission of building the Macintosh of AI agents. I think 3.0 is like the first step of that. Like it's 1984. We've got the first, I think this is like the clearest articulation of our vision from day one. It's 3.0, and now I think we just need to improve the product. And internally we talk about this. It's like, look, no product is ever fully done. But sometimes they are. Like sometimes like the core feature set, like look, Uber, press a button, get it right. Like Dropbox, like a folder that syncs. Like sure, like there's thousands of employees in these companies that are like sort of busy. But at some point the core feature set is done. I think we're almost there. I think we've got the 95% of the core building blocks that we need for this platform. And I think there's going to be decades worth of iteration after that. And by the way, that is not to say iteration matters a great deal. Like if you compare like the Ford Model T to like a Toyota Corolla from 2024, a huge difference, right? Like these things are just totally different objects, right? But that's basically just iteration. And so that's just 100 years worth of iteration. And that's the journey that we're beginning.
So now that you're close to the iteration stage, what's the threats that keep you up at night? When you're tossing and turning in bed, thinking about your company, what's the thing that you're worried about most?
I sleep like a baby. Look, frankly, it's execution. I always watch out on the landscapes. It's Schumpeter, who coined the term creative destruction, who also said this other thing that I love, which is every successful business is built on ever shifting sands. And I think it feels more true in AI than in any other industry. It's like you're built, and I'm always watching out for the unknown. What are some wrong assumptions that we made that are possibly buried very deeply into the product and into the business that may be the undoing of this business? And any founder in any category is going to tell you that, what keeps you up at night. I think it's always this paranoid, keeping your ear very close to the ground and watching from every angle and just watching out for trouble.
Are you staffing differently with the company? How do you staff not that many entry-level people would be my guess, because you just do so much with Lindy agents? Is that right?
Not necessarily, because to my point earlier, I have found entry-level people are more able to adopt these innovations. And so I love young people. I think that came out wrong, but I think
I'm going to clip that. That's just going to be the top of the episode. I love young people. That's we got it.
No, mean, it's true, like I think it's really powerful to pair, like, and we do that. Like, I think it's really powerful to have this like pairing of like really senior people with like really, really younger people. Because like the younger people, like they bring like that energy and that innovation and all of that. And then there's like the more senior people to like anchor them down to reality and like make them benefit from their experience. No, I think like really the way we've changed staffing is like we've got less of it. Like we punch above our weight in terms of revenue per employee right now, and our investors notice that, and they're like, "How come?" And we're like, "Well, we're using Lindy a whole lot. Like it's absurd how much we use Lindy. Like we've got thousands, like literally thousands of Lindys just for the company." So it's just like half of the company runs on AI agents. We are actually tracking our token spend compared to our payroll spend, and right now token spend is still like much lower than payroll spend, but the lines will cross at some point. Like you can see them, you can see the graph, and it's coming.
Wow. How long till it crosses?
That's a good question. We should like project that. My hunch is in 2 years or so. I think they'll cross.
Wow. Do you have a sense for? I think now I'm betraying my lack of knowledge, but if I remember right, Google is like at one point was about 1 to 2 million an employee in revenue, and that feels like most of the time people shoot like a really well-run technology business might get 1 to 2, maybe 3 if you're exceptional. Do you feel like that's similar? That number can just go up, and if so, by how much in the AI era?
Yeah. It's tough to me to answer this question because, like, yes, when you think about it from first principles, it would seem that this number could go up, at least in like some outlier cases, and we are seeing that with like the companies that are exploding. In the long term, at equilibrium, though, I wish we had like an economist right now. Like Noah Smith should be here because I feel like he would make some like complicated point about like comparative advantage and actually like margins are compressed down to zero because of perfect competition, and actually like that number like reaches some state of equilibrium where like you're actually like breathing rarer and rarer air as you get up there. But like like technologically, if you reason about it from first principles, it would seem like you would be able to push that number way higher.
Yeah, I think what's likely is things will push way higher for X number of period, but the reality over Y, it will come back down. It's just there's a big delta right now between those people that have that mindset of like, I can do things differently than I used to versus old school SaaS operators who just like, okay, I know exactly what my OTE's got to be. I know my ratios, and that's all just kind of out of whack.
Totally.
I was watching some of your previous interviews and reading how you've talked about Lindy in the past. It's, you said that, hey, we might in a few years just have this general knowledge worker with AI. I'm curious, like, what does that, if that's true, if we just are able to have this general knowledge worker, how does Lindy fit into that? Because it seems like Lindy is like, we're going to have a bunch of little sub agents that do a specific task. How does it work? How does like Lindy fit into that vision?
Well, I think hopefully Lindy is the universal knowledge worker. How it fits into that is, are you inquiring about like Lindy in particular, or like the value of having an agent builder platform in that world?
I guess the question is ultimately there's this idea of like, I hire a remote employee and instead of a person in my Zoom box, it's an AI agent, which is this sci-fi vision of the future, which Lindy doesn't quite seem to be. It's more like there might be one little head that appears in the Zoom box, but there's 1,000 little sub agents underneath who actually do all the tasks that one general knowledge worker represents. And so I guess what I'm trying to better understand is like, maybe this is just a question about AGI of like, at what point do we hit AGI? And if AGI occurs, what happens to Lindy? But that's, I think, a shitty question. We could try to answer it,
I don't think it's a shitty question at all. No, I think that the question about like in an AGI world, and this is also something we talk about quite a lot internally, like in an AGI world, like, do you still have multi-agent systems? And I strongly believe the answer is yes for a lot of reasons. Number one, parallelism, obviously. Like you can't have just like one giant GPU spitting out like trillions of tokens per second. Like you need to like parallel track. So that's number one. Number two, and I forgot who it is who told me that image, but I really liked it, where you can think of large language models as giant objects, just so huge objects, like trillions of parameters. And when you prompt the language model, you're effectively shining a flashlight through this giant forest of an object, right? And depending on like the angle, like you get a totally different projection on the other end, and you effectively get a different model. So like the prompt is effectively like a different model. And I believe, and this is one of these insights that I think seems very obvious when you read the literature, that people don't quite believe you today. But I believe in like a year or two, the labs are going to offer very lightweight, simple, fast ways to. You can think of it as like a fine tune of a model, but like, are you familiar with a LoRa?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you're going to be able to do like a LoRa of like a GPT-5 in like a second, and it'll cost you like 10 cents or something like that in a year or two. So you're literally going to get different models. And these different models are going to have different codes, different personalities. And in the push and pull between these different models, you're going to have emergent behaviors that come out from the interaction of these models. So for example, again, in the context of this Lindy build release that we're pushing now, you've got a Lindy engineer that builds what you ask it to build. And then, and this is the magical part about it, is like you've got a Lindy QA engineer that actually uses computer use to take the output of the Lindy engineer, test it around, try everything. And it's got a very specific prompt, this QA engineer, for what does it entail doing good QA? How do you do good QA? And the rules and so forth. And then it sends its work back to the software engineer for like if any bugs were found. So you can't really have the same kind of quality emergent behaviors with single agent systems.
I like the idea of the flashlight. I've always thought maybe that the trees are actually just like experts just screaming out their knowledge. It's like, I know this, It's that's maybe
it's terrifying.
Yeah, it's a forest of screaming scientists, and that's what a large language model is. And then we asked this forest of screaming scientists to be our AI girlfriends and boyfriends, and we're just torturing it. That's what we've built. Maybe to wrap up, I think a year ago was the last time we talked. We were emailing back and forth about this, but you. I've talked in public a lot about your views on like AI safety, on how there is a real dangerous path that we're potentially heading down. Where are you at with that today? Are you still a believer in like AI safety is a thing? It's not a thing. Are you an adherent of the Berkeley rationalists? Where do you land?
I'm deeply concerned. Deeply, deeply, deeply concerned. I think I'm even more concerned in a way because like I catch myself. I am less viscerally concerned than I was 2 years ago. Intellectually, I'm just as concerned, but I'm less viscerally concerned. And I suspect that there's a weird psychological thing that happens. I know that for a fact because there are a lot of studies that find that this is the same thing for animals. Like if you put an animal in a situation of danger, it runs away. If you put it in a situation of danger and it can't run away, it doesn't try. And this is actually very rational behavior, like evolutionarily, like evolution tweaked this behavior because it's like, why expend your energy for nothing? Like you might need it once the danger actually comes. Like you're gonna need it to fight. So just stay put. And from the point of view of the animal, obviously like this behavior is hard coded into it by evolution. And so it doesn't like this is not like obviously a rational thing that they think about. They don't think, I'm gonna stay put in case the danger arrives. Like I assume it feels like a weird sense of calm in the middle of the storm, like, I'm just going to stay put, and that's how evolution made them stay put. It's just by having them feel that calm. So I think we're in that situation right now. And I think I can't do anything about it. I hate that because like I think of myself as like a pretty high agency person, but like, look, I'm going to use my platform. I'm going to shout it from the rooftops. Like we need to do something. And that's something I don't exactly know what it is. But yeah, deeply concerned and even more concerned because I'm concerned intellectually, but less viscerally than I used to be.
The analogy you told me once is that you're building an AI company is like you being the nuclear reactor business, but you're trying to shout about the danger of nuclear weapons. Does that still feel right? Is that the analogy correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. In a future episode, well, I don't know if it's going to be a future episode or if we'll publish it before this one comes out, but I'm interviewing Nate Soares, who is like one of the big leaders in the AI safety research community. And I came in assuming I'm too stupid to understand the arguments. I'm just like, I'm not as bright as these people. But whether you believe the AI safety arguments or not, it's interesting to see how viscerally and deeply people feel it. Like there's this look of existential dread that people have when they talk about this stuff. And that in itself is concerning. You know, I listen, I've watched these podcasts, I talk to people in the community, and I'm just like, man, you are stressed about this, and you are scared.
They are scared, and these people are not rando tinfoil hat people. I mean, like that shouldn't. That is like an argument, an appeal to authority. Like that shouldn't weigh too heavily on people's evaluations of the risk. But like, look, it says something. Like, yes, like I think it's something like 3 out of the 5 top AI researchers in the world, including Ilya Sutskever and Geoff Hinton, are deeply, deeply concerned. Elon Musk is deeply, deeply concerned. Pretty much all the heads of the labs are deeply concerned, like including Dario from Anthropic is on the record for saying like, yes, this is troubling. Like Sama has obviously this quote where he's like, if this goes wrong, like this is lights out for all of us. Like OpenAI was funded from day one out of that concern. Like, yeah, this is not a weird bunch of tinfoil hats living in the woods that are concerned. It's like it's serious people.
Yeah, I would draw a large difference between the scientists versus the founders, because I feel like a lot of the times they use that as this product is very serious. It's very serious. Please buy my subscription. It's so serious. You should get a subscription to my product.
I'm sorry. I totally disagree with that take. It's like the whole like bootlegger versus like this would like since when do founders go like, oh, my product may cause the end of the world and it's so very dangerous. Everyone please buy it. Like this would go counter to the entire history of business. When you look at automotive manufacturers, like the history of business has been punctuated with founders fervently resisting any attempt at regulation or any attempt to portray their invention as even remotely dangerous. Like the cigarette industry had doctors on billboards saying, I like Lucas Strike because like the smoke is smoother, right? The automotive industry was resisting safety belts, which like what's the downside of safety belts, right? I don't think so. I think if anything, the fact that they are willing to speak against their incentive, as I am, by the way, it's not comfortable for me to be the founder of an AI company and talk about the AI risk, because even if I position myself as a nuclear plant and these things are nuclear weapons, like even if you accept this framing, look, I'm still downstream of the same supply chain, and so it would hurt me if the supply chain was hurt. And yet I would, if you gave me a button today to pause this entire supply chain for 10 years, I would press this button so fast. So no, if anything, I think it should convince people even more that these people are actively speaking out against their own self-interest.
I think that's a really interesting place for us to wrap up today. I'm really excited about Lindy. When I do these prep for these things, a lot of times I'll look at the product and I'm like, yeah, cool. But this is one of those where I went, oh yeah, let me buy it. And let me see how I can change how I think about my business. So if people wanted to learn more or to find out more about your product, where should they go?
Yeah, lindy.ai/Evan. I don't want to promise stuff because I always get this wrong, but like you're going to get a discount of some sort.
Oh, okay. Hey, I didn't even know that coming into this. Hey, you get a discount. If you made it to the end of this conversation, you were treated with a reward.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why I get in trouble, because I just sort of make it up on the fly, and then the team is like scrambling to be like, fuck, now we have to like build the thing. But sure, why not?
Yeah, sure. Why not? All right. Well, thanks so much, and we'll talk later.
Yeah. Thank you, Evan.